DJ Jimmy Metro here with a very special guest. Back in the day before 93Q was country, it was known as KKBQ FM 93Q Houston's Rock Hits. The format was more modern, contemporary rock and pop. On Saturday nights, a DJ from that radio station would host a local TV show, which was my jam, by the way, called Videocity. He would interview the most popular musicians in between airings of the most popular music videos in that era. So please welcome the host of Videocity, one of the most popular, dare I say, one of the coolest DJs from 93Q / musician, Mr. Bob King. Thank you.
Hey, Jimmy. Really, I'm honored to be here. It's nice when someone, obviously this was a long time ago, so, it's nice when people still remember. So appreciate the invite today, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. So obviously, first question, man, how'd you get the gig? What led you to be become an on-air personality?
Well, yeah. Well, I started out in college. When I was a kid, I always kind of fantasized, I guess. I had a little tape deck in the basement and turntable and played radio. Disc jockey, invited friends and family in and that sort of thing. Went to college, worked at a college radio station and worked at a suburban Chicago radio station. And then upon graduation, I got a call from some different stations. They were more smaller market. I could have stayed where I was.
So did you put a resume out, or they were?
Yeah, I had an ad on radio and records, I believe was the publication. Okay. They had the help. Well, not you could apply for, just put your name out there looking for a job, and I actually had a bite for a job that I wanted to take when I was a sophomore in college. And it was outside, it was in suburban Colorado, but my dad was like, okay. He was never very supportive, right?
Really?
Of the radio.
Really?
Yeah, my mom was. My dad would be later, but he was like, well, look, you can take it. But he goes, if you leave and you want to come back to college, the free ride is over. My parents were paying for my education. So I didn't take it. I waited till graduation. I stayed at the station I was working at in suburban Chicago. But my director of broadcasting at the college station said, you really need to move around if you want to make it in the business. So I got some responses, and of all places, Lufkin, Texas,
really
was the one I took. And they kind of lied a little bit. The PD did about where Lufkin was and a few other things.
It's a small town too, right?
It is. It was very small. It was culture shock for me being from Chicago. So long story short, I packed the U-Haul in July of 81. 2 weeks after college graduation, said goodbye to my family, moved to Lufkin, and cried on the floor of my apartment the first night I got to Lufkin when I saw like what I'd gotten into. I lived across the street from the radio station, literally. I spent about a year there. Didn't really like Lufkin very much. Made some good friends. Went to Nacogdoches for a year and a half. And this is a story, I don't know how much time we have here, but the story of 93Q goes back to Ernie Brown, who had come to us, worked at a station in Nacogdoches. We really had a major market air staff. Many of us left. But Ernie had come back to school at SFA. He had actually worked at KRBE in Houston. Really? So we all were like, oh, it's Ernie Brown. He's been at the big time and all that. Well, he didn't stay very long. John Lander hired him to do 10 to 2 at night on the 79Q. So he
was a DJ.
Yes, Ernie was a disc jockey, had worked at KRBE, and like I said, when decided he was going to go back to school, he didn't stay at SFA. John Lander called and he answered. Okay. And Ernie got I had a serious girlfriend at the time, and Ernie didn't think I would be interested in anything part-time. So he asked my roommate, Dave Shea, who, of course, was a disc jockey for many years there, who unfortunately passed away several years ago. And Dave and I were roommates, but Dave took a part-time job.
Is he the one in some of your videos?
Yeah. Well, he's certainly in some of my videos. I don't know. But
I think there's one where you guys did a trip, where you guys went on a trip somewhere. And
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Dave, yeah, Dave was a great guy. We were roommates in Nacogdoches before we came to Houston. But he took a job part-time, and then they hired him full-time for the AM. And then he invited me to take his Saturday night shift. He didn't invite. He put the word out to Lander that I would be interested. The shift was from midnight to 7 overnight on Saturday night into Sunday morning. Okay. And I drove to Houston for several weeks doing that. And then the phone rang about 6 weeks later when I was on the air in Nacogdoches, and it was John's assistant saying, would you be interested in doing 2 to 5 in the morning on the FM? And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. You know, it was like, wow. Because, you know, the station was number 1 at the time, and I couldn't get there fast enough. So I said yes. And that's how I ended up in Houston.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how did Videocity come into fruition? Because that came later on, right? Years later?
It did. I did overnights for a while, and then I started doing the morning zoo with John. I was just kind of hanging out. And actually, Hollywood Henderson, who was our 10 to 2, actually, no, wait. Was he? He was, I believe Hollywood did 6 to 10 at night and also 10 to 2. He was doing 10 to 2, I think, when I first got there. He was the first host, and I don't really know how it all happened, but long story short, he went out of town or I just took a hiatus or something. They asked me to go in and co-host it, or not co-host it, to guest host it after it had been on the air for about 2 months. And I just got the gig. They just asked me to stay. So I was doing the morning show, and then with John and the zoo crew, and then doing that. And we did that from, I believe, 1986 through almost 1990. At first, it was just when Astroworld was open. And then we ended up doing it year round. And I think you probably, you know, if you were a fan of the show, we ended up going to Astroworld. Was never too crazy about this, that we would be going to clubs. You know, shooting that were like one of the favorite places I did the show from was a place called Waves on Westheimer. Was a beach bar. But the concept, if you want to know, and I'd like to give credit here because the whole brainchild of the show was Gene Wall of Off the Wall Productions. And Gene, a real smart guy, realized that back then, if you didn't have cable television, you couldn't see MTV, and MTV was still relatively new and was doing music videos. I mean, now I don't know what they're doing. I haven't watched MTV or VH1 in years, but
it's gotten a little crazy. They've gone off the rails, and it's reality television and stuff now.
Exactly.
But to let you know, like Videocity for me and the kids in my neighborhood who didn't have MTV, that was a big deal, and
and that was the reason
we loved it.
Yeah, because you couldn't see the music videos, because a lot of people back then, people don't realize this now. I still feel so old talking about this, but it was 1986, and a lot of people didn't have cable.
Right.
So KPRC Channel 2, Gene Wall went to 93Q and to Astroworld. It was a joint venture, and then sold the show to KPRC. So we had a KPRC apparently is not just Houston. I mean, people in Austin saw it and whatnot. So the show had ended up actually having some very good ratings, and I was surprised by the, popularity of the show. And but that was all Gene Wall's idea, and we would produce it and edit it every week at Channel 2. And I believe it stayed on the air, like I said, for about 4 years. And it was just a blast. It was different doing television because, when radio, obviously no one sees you.
Right.
And it freaked me out because I had zero television experience. But it really, between the two, 93Q and Videocity, still the two most fun things that I ever did as far as career-wise.
That's awesome. Well, it shows. And I want to tell you that when I was watching it, we would all get together and we would wait for it to come on and couldn't wait. We're Thursday, we're like, come on, because we were the kind of kids that didn't really have a lot to, like, we couldn't afford to go to Astroworld either. So when we saw that was very exciting. And but no, man, you had just a cool energy and a cool vibe, you had the cool lady's haircut and the shorts, and it was just like, hey, this
Yeah,
guy's
a lot of moose in that hair, a lot
right on.
more hair back then than now, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a
Well,
fun time.
we would, after that was over, the next day we were like, well, we got to dress like that too because we want to go to Astroworld and we want, to dance with those girls. And no, but it did seem like a lot of fun, and you made it look like it was fun. And
Oh, it was an absolute gas, it really was. And Matt got to meet a lot of 93Q was just an amazing experience. Like doing there were a lot of recording artists and television, motion picture, and just entertainment people always coming and going from 93Q, but especially during the morning show. So between doing the morning zoo and the backstage stuff we got to do with the radio station and Videocity, it was amazing.
well, I think that's got a lot to do with why I was attracted to that one, because it was a local radio station, but that gave us access to musicians
Right.
and Hollywood actors and just all kinds of
Right.
things that seemed like they were just kind of out of grasp. But do you have a favorite behind the scenes moment that you haven't talked about that you can talk about, either from
Well,
Videocity or 93Q?
First of all, but before we forget, I do want to say, since I gave a shout out to Gene, the biggest shout out I have to give for any of it ever happening would be for John Lander. He was obviously the creator of 79Q and 93Q. And he, when he came to Houston, no one listened to AM radio anymore. Music radio was all on FM, and 79Q came along before 93. 93 was beautiful music, and they went #1 with music on he just created this phenomenon that was the Q and the Q Morning Zoo, and then of course it went on to the FM for simulcasting. But John Lander was the greatest boss I ever had in my life, and he was just a genius as far as
well, I thought he was just like one of the DJs there, but you're making it sound he had a lot to do with the.
Oh, he was the creator. He had come. He
Really?
he created the Q Morning Zoo with a guy by the name of Shannon who ended up at Z100 in New York. But I believe they started it together in Tampa. But I just wanted to give that shout out to John.
Sure.
He was not he was the creator and the mastermind behind the zoo, and my boss. For many years. He eventually was no longer the program director there, and just was the morning show guy. But for the heyday run and all that, John was in charge. Behind the scenes, I don't know. I mean, the Robin Williams visit to the radio station.
Oh, I'm sure that was phenomenal.
Yeah, he just came in. Good Morning Vietnam was popular, or I just come out at the time, and that was reason for his visit. He was an amazing guy, and I did a post about it recently where most comedians have scripts and people that write for them, or they write for them, but Robin Williams never had scripts. Everything he said was funny. It was, but I honestly, even back then, I kind of felt, I just thought, what is this guy like when it all, and it seemed like,
right, well, like when he's at home.
I do know that the limo driver so he left our station. We kept him longer than we were supposed to, but the limo driver said he literally just passed out, when he got into the limo.
Yeah, he exhausts all this energy.
Yeah, and I think there were, some other things going on there that eventually, became. I think he was somebody that fought depression for years, but the Robin Williams visit was amazing. For me personally, when on Videocity, we got to fly out to when the Monkees reformed. I mean, this is something as a kid, I would be in my pajamas in front of the TV set, watching the Monkees on Saturday morning, and wanting to be a monkey, and it,
right.
People
well, they had a resurgence back in the mid '80s too, I think.
Yes,
a TV
that's
show.
Exact. Yeah, that's where. Yeah, the whole thing did when they reformed. They put the TV show on MTV, but we were invited to fly out to LA for one of the many trips we took out there to interview artists, and we watched them do a music video till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then had an interview with them. And that experience. And then I got to bring them on stage a week later at Southern Star. But for me, that was
nice.
Just, that's something that, you just think, I never expected to be doing things, like that.
You got to meet Elton too, right?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Was that for you? Was that the big one? Was that the?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow,
absolutely.
this is why I'm doing this.
I'm a piano player, and I'd always followed Elton's career, and I got to meet him in Houston backstage in '84. We already had the station had the whole front row at the Summit, and they gave me front row seats, and I was like, oh, that I thought was amazing in itself. And then the day of the show, they called and said, hey, you want to meet Elton tonight? I'm like, oh.
Of course.
And so there's room full of people, right? And he was never going to meet this 50 or 60 people. So they said, look, everyone's walking to the right, go through this curtain to the left. And they took 5 or 6 or 7 of us from the zoo. And, there he was. And another great moment for me with that was, I think it was 88 or 89. We got invited up to Dallas, and he was re-signing with MCA Records, and he was going just in about 5 or 6 different markets to recording studios and having a private party for different radio and television people. And there was 50 of us in this recording studio in Dallas, and he was there with Bernie Taupin, and we got to spend several hours with them. And my buddy said, look, that piano in the middle of the room, he's probably going to do a little concert. So after I talked with him and Bernie, I went and sat by the piano, stood by the piano for like 30 minutes and just waited. And so I can say that I actually stood at the piano and watched him do about an 8 or 9 song concert. So that was an amazing night. The Kiss show in Galveston was a good story. We were doing
that was wild.
It was wild. The story behind that, I believe it was about 90 or 91. Videocity had been taken off the air, and then we were doing some other show, which I never really. Well, I believe there was a show that we did briefly from Waterworld called Beach Party, which I never really liked. And then we did like
a spin-off or like a during the day type
it was
of
a
thing?
spin-off. And then there was a brief show again on Channel 2 called Studio A. And Studio A was on the air when we did this free Kiss show in Galveston. What people don't realize, that Kiss had not played together at that point in time for a while. Now, how long that was, I do not know. They also were not wearing makeup at the time. Well, we got an interview with Gene Simmons at this condo in Galveston, and did the interview, and then followed them in the limos and all that to the beach. It was spring break, I believe, and they, without our knowledge, they practiced like 6 or 7 songs, and that's all they did. Yeah, that's all they did. And the crowd was a spring break crowd. There was let's just say that when the 6 or 7 songs ended, they wanted more, and they were not pleased, and a riot broke out. And I was literally on stage doing some interviews there was a keyboard guy back there. I was still doing TV stuff while the show was going on, and we're hiding behind speakers, and I didn't think we were going to get out of there. It got ugly real quick.
The people wanted more. They were like, come on, bring it on.
Yeah,
we're a little rusty,
well,
we need to rehearse a little bit.
Alcohol and spring break does not always mix well, but that was a crazy day too. That seems to kind of stick out in my mind. There were a lot, and honestly, sometimes when we all get together and talk, someone will remember something that you've completely forgotten.
Well, I think that one you were talking about where you're behind the speaker at the Kiss concert, I think that one may be up on your channel.
It is. And
I got to tell you, I love the videos that you've uploaded to that channel, man. And the one that I'd like you to talk about, if you can, you have one called The End of the 80s on 93Q. And I love that video for so many reasons, but mainly I think because you see the sausage being made, there's a lot of pre-recordeds going on.
Yeah.
And but you were doing, I think you need a little bit of credit here too, because you were doing something that a lot of people weren't doing back then, which was taking the camera and turning it around and pointing it. Of course, everybody's doing it now. Everybody has one of these and they can go, hey, look at me. But I love that video. And can you just talk a little bit about that one?
You
Like, what was
know,
the feeling that night?
I don't recall what maybe I've only got a couple other little videos, and I don't even know where they are anymore of being in the studio, whether it was me or other people, a couple of brief shots. But it was 1989 and it was New Year's Eve, and I got I drew the short straw or something to do the,
Really, I was
no one,
wondering about that too. I was wondering if you volunteered for that or if it was like,
no,
well, we got to draw
I didn't
straws.
volunteer. I did not volunteer for that. I mean, that was the thing, radio obviously back then was all live, and it's a 24/7 deal, 365. And someone's got to do Christmas morning, someone's got to do New Year's Eve and all of that. And so actually, once I was told I was doing it, then it's like, okay, well, this is kind of cool. It's the end of a decade. And obviously it was a crazy decade for me and an incredible decade for me. And so I enjoyed putting together the countdown. And so I thought, well, you know what? We were talking before we went live here today about my first camcorder. And it was gigantic. It looked like back like a news channel.
Right.
When it
That's what
sat
I
on
was.
your shoulder.
Was it one of those where you had to have a VHS cassette like this big to pop into
No,
that
no,
sucker?
it was actually a Video 8 recorder. It was the first all condensed one by Sony, and I think it cost, it cost about $1,700 yeah, and it was, but I mean, the whole idea of being able to have video like that. So I brought it to the studio and set it up, and just let it roll from some different angles. And then years later, I thought, well, maybe some people would like to see this. And it really, I think, is the only show that I have on the air there from, because I was there for at least 8 or 9 years. And really, if you look online, there really isn't any video of anyone on the air at 93Q. So
Right.
I think people like it for that reason. And people were kind of coming and going. And it was a fun night. I think it's a good way to see how we kind of created the party atmosphere without anyone else really being in the studio. But yeah, it was about 80-90% live.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that video. There's a lot of things going on. I'm pretty sure I was listening that night, so it's cool to like see it years later and go, hey, to kind of feel like I was a part of that in some way. But
Yeah, and it's kind of neat that now, again, I'm not knocking anything, but radio just isn't what it used to be. It's all voice tracked, and nobody's really, I mean, for the most part, live and on the air. And I think it captures an era and a time that just doesn't exist anymore. And it's one of the reasons I really, never got back into the business. It just started changing real quickly. We went
absolutely.
from being able to do John Landers saying, hey, I don't care what you do as long as it's funny. You'll hear from me or my assistant if it's not good, if it's not funny, but otherwise have at it. We went from that to consultants coming in and saying, if you can't say it in 13 seconds, don't open the microphone.
Wow.
And so that's when I knew the writing was on the wall, that it was time to do something different. I don't enjoy that.
Well, I'll tell you what we do enjoy is seeing you playing music and doing the cover songs, because I haven't, like I said, I think we talked a little bit before the show here, and I haven't seen every single one, but I've watched a lot of them. And
well, you're lucky you haven't seen every single one, because a lot of them are very forgettable.
Well, the ones I've seen are really good, and Cowboy Rides Away is one of my favorite.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I told you, I play in a band with Texas Joe Bailey. We cover that one. And
okay, so you play, I see the keyboards behind you. You play the keyboards?
Well, actually, with that band, I play drums. So that's another thing. If you decide to take your act live, I'm your drummer. I'll be your Val Kilmer.
Absolutely. No, music's a passion for me. I do that for my own benefit. I do play in a church locally. I would like to play in a band, I think, but I don't know. It's a hard business. I love music, and I like to, so I do it really for my own benefit. I decided, well, I'll start putting them up, on YouTube. But music is just a passion for me, and one of the main reasons I got into radio to begin with, because I just love playing music.
Absolutely. And I think the landscape is changing a little bit as far as venues that are hiring live bands. It does seem like they are being appreciated a little bit more here and there.
Good.
And there's a shift happening. So yeah, if you decide to get out there, man, like I said, you let me know.
Absolutely.
We will make it happen.
Absolutely.
So other than that, what are you up to nowadays, and where can the fans go to find your content?
Well, the content is on Bob King 59. I don't. I'm on Facebook. I don't believe I have an Instagram. If I open one, I don't use it. I have the YouTube channel, Bob King, 59, where I post all of that. As far as professionally, I've been in sales and marketing for years, and about 2 years ago, a friend of mine has a company called Speakeasy Communications. We are in public safety. Real briefly, we go into buildings that are large, whether it be an Amazon warehouse, a hospital, a school, whatever. Two-way radios for emergency responders have to work throughout these facilities, whether they're 1 story or 100. And when they don't, we have to put in fire code requires boosting for that. So we do cellular and two-way radio boosting across the country, and I do sales and marketing for them.
Cool. And that's based in Houston?
Yep. Well, we're in Houston, and but we work nationally. Yeah. I enjoy it. It's nice to do something that, for public safety and for our first responders. So I do enjoy the work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've taken up enough of your time, and
I enjoyed it.
I really appreciate your time today. Maybe we can do it again one day.
Absolutely, Timmy.
I love it. So
like I said, it's nice. It's always nice to be remembered. Once in a while you run into people like, oh yeah. Oh wow, I remember that. So it's nice to be remembered.
Well, I never forgot about you, but I want to say that I was just searching some random stuff up on YouTube probably a couple years ago, and I ran across one of the videos, and I went, whoa, that's awesome. Let's see if there's more. And when I was watching them, I wasn't looking at who posted them, and I said, well, I wonder who this guy is. And then
I wish there were more out there, because we did have a camcorder at the station. I don't know what happened to some of that stuff, but one of our guys there did some videotaping. I don't know if he's got him. His name's Tom Entwistle. I need to get with him, because there was a lot of video shot. I just who knows if it's any good anymore, but it just there's not much of it out there.
Well, I got to say, I've probably watched every single one of the ones that you uploaded about from 93Q, probably a couple more times than I probably should admit, because I love them that much. So if you find something else, man, of course, upload.
Absolutely.
Because they are fascinating. I love them.
Oh, great.
So in closing, let me say you had a very positive impact on me back then. And for you to have allowed me to show that gratitude for that and sharing your time with me today is not only a powerful thing, but also an empowering thing. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
and,
sir.
Thanks for being on, because it means
not a problem, Jimmy. My pleasure, sir.
Absolutely. So we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. I'm DJ Jimmy Metro with Bob King saying, "Carry on, my wayward son.
There'll be peace when we are done, my friend." Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, sir.